All right, everybody, welcome back to the power of leveraging your story selling in your business. Today I'm joined here by Miss Amanda Bayerle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Yada. I'm just so excited to come here and hang out with you. I'm like, this is such a great excuse to hang out.
Yeah, totally. It was so funny because I was talking with Nicholas, and I don't know in what order these will be when I get them out to people, but I was talking to Nicholas and I was like, oh my gosh, like why isn't Amanda on this interview? So we just decided to book one completely separate.
I know. I'm excited. And it's so hard too, because when Nicholas and I do stuff together, it's like really hard within 30 minutes for both of us to talk. And Nicholas loves to talk. So I'll just be like in like the corner, like smiling on the video. And I'm like, so this is good that we're like separate.
You're like, yes, babe.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. And, I know you guys separately, like we're really great friends and we go on vacations and stuff together. And so I know you have an amazing story. Nicholas obviously has an amazing story. And you guys are leading men to be three-dimensional businessmen. Like, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your business is and like the part that you play in that, and then we'll get into everything else.
Cool. So we help businessmen prosper in their health, wealth, and relationships. We've created this amazing community called the Billion Dollar Brotherhood. And when we first got started, it was all like health coaching for businessmen because we realized that like staying healthy as entrepreneurs was really hard. And so we used and leveraged that story of like, we started a health business, but yet we sucked at our own health during that business because we were only focusing on business. So we were like, if we're actually knowledgeable and good at health, how many other people are like that? So we were like, how can we be different than everyone else? We're like, we're going to do like coaching for businessmen, like health coaching, because everyone we know and their mom helps women lose weight. So we're like, why is no one like specializing in men? So that's how we got started in that. And then we realized like, wow, these men, like they all need to know each other, because if they actually were in a community of like-minded men who had similar values, it'd be so much easier to continue on their health plan and their goals and all that stuff, because your environment's so important. And you know this. And so it's like, we just wanted to create a place for these guys to connect, form brotherhood, and actually like be in an environment that's healthy for them, for their success. And it's just like evolved into this amazing movement. I'm so proud of Nicholas and him being like this like little influencer. Like at Funnel Hacking Live, we could not even walk back to our room at night because he was just getting stopped and all these people. And I was like, oh my God, I'm married to like a celebrity. This is so awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, even in you saying like these guys needed the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you agree? Like that's the safe space where they felt like they could even tell their story.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's so incredible because I mean, at these events, it's usually like me and my mom and like a volunteer or something, or like volunteers at our events. And we're the only women, and we get to hear these men share crazy stuff that like they've never told anyone in their life. And I'm just like, wow, like seeing them like be so relieved and so transformed because they now can actually share their story and share things that they've never felt comfortable sharing in their whole life with anyone. It's like, it like gives me chills.
And like what happens when they do step into that space? Because I'm guessing like for many of us, when you start telling your story, it's scary, right? Because we're just like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna know that thing about me and they're not gonna like me, or I'm gonna get kicked out, or like everyone's gonna laugh at me, right? Like what's the reception like usually for them?
Well, the response is always like, oh my gosh, like we love you even more, which is crazy. And we have people in our group, a lot of them, like I'd probably say like 40% of them like have been to jail or like committed some type of crime, and they all feel so shameful about it. And you would never know that they've ever done anything like that. And when they share that, everyone's like, wow, like we now connect with him even more because we see who he is today and what he's been able to accomplish and like what he's gone through. And it just forms this like really strong bond, and people want to help them even more with their businesses and anything they need help with. Like the other day, one of our guys put on an event in Yuma, Arizona, and like one of the other guys in San Diego had like 3 hours notice about this event. And Yuma from San Diego is 3 hours away. So he literally hopped in his car, drove to Arizona, and only got to like be at the event for 2 hours. But it was like, yeah, like we're brothers. Like I'm going to drive 3 hours to support them in their event. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, because they're so connected now and on their stories, it's amazing.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Okay, let's go back to, obviously you and Nicholas spoke at Funnel Hacking Live, which was amazing. Like it was one of the funnest experiences of my life. Like I'm sure it was a highlight for you guys too.
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
How was that? Because I feel like for those of you who don't know, like Amanda's kind of like in the background of their
Oh
business,
yes.
right? And
I forgot to say what I actually do in the business.
no, that's totally cool. You can totally touch on it. But I guess I just want to know, like, how was that for you? Because it was kind of like you went from being in the background and like making shit happen to like on stage talking about your story as a person, like your story as a couple, your story as a company. Like that was a huge step.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is I actually was always the forefront of everything we did until 4 years ago. I was like the face of everything. I was just speaking everywhere. I was doing the videos. And then because our whole story with Nicholas and I is he was like not really into it. And he was also like cleaning carpets all day long. So it was very like, I was trying to like build this thing and he was just like trying to like, pay our bills and help his dad. And so it was just amazing to see like, I always tell the women all the time, I'm like, just support your men so well. Like you will be so amazed. If you want your man to change, like just support them, just love them, keep encouraging them, because that's what I did with Nicholas. And like, he is like totally different, like total transformation. And now to see him like in the spotlight is really amazing. So it was really uncomfortable actually when he asked me, because I told Nicholas, you're going to speak on stage at Funnel Hacking Live next year. And you told yourself that too.
Yeah.
So it's so amazing, like the power of our words and like manifesting that stuff. And when Russell was like, I want both of you guys to speak, I was like,
You're
oh
like,
my God.
that wasn't the plan.
I was like, that wasn't the plan, but I'm like, I think it's so needed. So I was really like excited to do it. But at the same time, it was like this really awkward dance of like when he talks, when I talk, just to make it like very, not awkward and people being like that person,
Yeah.
So it was really fun. And I think it was awesome to be able to share our story together because we literally have done everything together and give hope to relationships and couples and stuff like that. So I was so excited.
Did it feel vulnerable? Like, because I know that, I mean, you guys were talking about the struggles that you went through, right? And Nicholas, like struggling to pay the bills and like you working God knows how many jobs and pretending that your kitchen was like an office. And so, I mean, and in front of 4,500 people,
Yeah.
right? It's I think it's one of those times where you kind of go, all right, I'm going to do this, and I feel like a lot of people get stuck there where they're just like, no, I don't want to. Like, I feel like maybe I should, or I could, or it might be good for my business or for me even, but they can never get past that like deep breath moment. Like, how did you get there?
I think that training yourself to do stuff that's uncomfortable is something that every high performer has. And if you want to be able to really achieve big things, you need to do what the high performers do. And that's always be uncomfortable, always step into that like scary zone. And I feel like I've just kind of like leaned myself into like, if I feel uncomfortable, if I feel scared, I'm just going to do it anyway, because I know on the other side of that fear is my greatest breakthrough. And that was one of the points that we shared at Funnel Hacking Live was your breakdowns can become your greatest breakthroughs. And so it's like the stuff that like you have sucked at, the stuff that has been the scariest for you, usually it will help once you overcome it, it'll become other people's like greatest breakthroughs. They're like, oh my gosh, because you went through that. Now I feel like I can go through that as well.
Right, right. And that's so interesting because it's one of the themes that I've seen in all of these interviews is like everyone says it's like when I shared that thing that I thought I was going to be rejected for, that I was going to lose love for, like that's actually when my people showed up and they were like, oh my gosh, because you shared that story, I knew that you could help me, or I knew that you would understand my situation, or I just knew I had to be a part of what you were doing. Right. Is that what you guys do?
Yeah, I think we totally felt like that. And Nicholas really shared a lot of his, like personal story, like really being overweight and all the insecurities he had. And so many people came up to him and was like, I literally was going to commit suicide like a couple months ago, where like I wrote the letter and I never did it. And so him sharing that then like created a space for other people to be like, oh my gosh, I went through the same exact thing. And so, yeah. And then I had like the side of like the women coming up to me being like, oh my gosh, I feel like I now can like support my husband. I have a better relationship from this. So it was pretty amazing just to see that, like, even though it's uncomfortable and it's a little bit scary, I personally don't resonate. Like I shared with you earlier, I don't resonate a lot with that side of like fear of things, because I don't know, like I always been like a fearless type of person my whole life. Like I started speaking when I was in 4th grade.
Right.
And so it hasn't ever been like super fearful for me. Like I was always the outgoing kid. I was always like in front of the class. And so that was kind of my nature. But to see other people, like I feel like I can kind of give them like, yeah, you can do it. Like it's not that hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but isn't it interesting though? Because I think that I wouldn't classify myself as like fearless, but I was always willing to put myself in like an uncomfortable or like a difficult position. Even if I didn't necessarily know how to do the thing, I was like, well, I'll figure it out, right? Like that was very much my thing. Um, and and I think like tapping into a little bit of like our personal relationship, like I know that a lot of that was because I was like, I have to be the one that's good at things. Right. Like, and so I would put myself out there and I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be perfect. Like, I'm going to be like the perfect kid in school. I'm going to be the perfect daughter. Like, I'm going to be that thing. And that was a little bit of what I touched on at my presentation, right? I was like, here I went and I got hair extensions and I got fake eyelashes and it totally backfired. And the universe just like slapped me down and was like, no, like you will show up as yourself, perfectly imperfect as you are.
Yeah.
And so I found that if I'm doing like a presentation or if I'm teaching something, I'm totally great. Like I'll go through the content, like I'll teach the thing, like I'll have the talk, whatever. But when it comes to like my story, like being actually like authentic and vulnerable and like showing a picture of my puffy eyes or talking about my divorce or talking about how I feel when my kids come back and forth from like our house and their dad's, like that's where I'm like, ooh, like I hope that somebody out there feels like this too, because sometimes I just feel called to like share that story for no reason. Like it makes no absolute sense to me. Like I'm just like, I have no idea why I'm going to type this up. I have no idea why I'm going to hit post. I have no idea why I'm going to send it out to people, but here it goes. And like, did you find that too? Like there were certain areas in your life where you're just like, I've got this, no problem. But when it comes to like your thing.
Oh yeah. Well, and I feel like I'm still in that because I'm still trying to find more so of like my story and like sharing that, because I've been behind the scenes and supporting Nicholas and always sharing his story. And what's really interesting is I actually write better as Nicholas than I do myself because I've trained myself to do that. Yeah. And so now I'm like trying to train myself, you know, in my free time to, you know, share my story more so instead of writing as Nicholas, which has been a part of our business for a while. So for me, one thing that I did the other day is Nicholas, I'm such a planner. I mean, you know this, I am like the ultra planner and that's what I do for our company, which is great. But when it comes to things that I can't control, that's what like I have gone to therapy for. Cause I'm like, if something does not happen the way I want it to happen, I lose my shit. Right. And I'm like, how do I not lose my shit? Like I need to like get over this. So yeah, so I totally thought I was like going to get pregnant really fast, really easily. And I'm still not pregnant right now. And I'm like, okay, like I literally lost my shit. Like I had like meltdowns. Like I've never had meltdowns before in my life. I was like, okay, this is like the hardest thing I've ever gone through, because all the stuff comes in your head of like, something's wrong with me. Like, what am I doing different? Is something like wrong with my body? Like just all those fears and insecurities and like stuff that is like really deep, you know, like rooted fears that I've never experienced before. And so the other day I was like, well, I can either keep this a secret until I get pregnant, or I can just share my whole story and be like, this is what I'm going through. Like, and I had like 25 messages from girls on Instagram saying like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I'm also going through this for a year and a half. I've never told anyone. Or like I've had 3 miscarriages. So like so many people reached out to me after that post because I felt like, I don't know why, like I feel like I'm supposed to share this because a lot of people don't talk about it because it's like an insecurity thing or they're
Well, there's so
afraid
much
to
like
share it.
shame, right? Like I don't know, like I feel like it's like shame and guilt and like insecurity and like all of it like wrapped up into
Yeah. Yeah. It's like almost like you're not like a proper woman.
yeah.
Almost. It's like this thing. And it's like women don't want to share it. And once I finally shared it, I realized so many of my friends who've never talked about it, they were
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I struggled for a whole year. And I'm like, I follow you and I didn't even know this.
Yeah.
And so it
Oh,
was cool.
that's so crazy. I was talking to Natalie Hodson and actually in one of these interviews, and she was telling me that she's kind of really done like a deep dive into Brene Brown's work because you know she's
Yeah.
like big on vulnerability and like shame and guilt and all of these things. And she said that she found this like analogy where she said that shame and vulnerability are like oil and water, right? And so as your level of vulnerability rises, like shame and vulnerability can exist in the same place. So the more vulnerable you are, the less shame you experience,
Mm.
which I thought was great. And you're just demonstrating it now, right? It's like, okay, I felt all of this stuff inside of me. And the second that I said it out loud, like not only can it not exist anymore because you've named it, right? But then you start getting the support from all of the people that have been there or like done
Mhm.
that before that are just like, hey, it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with you. Like sometimes things just take longer than you think, or maybe
Yeah.
you have to go to the doctor or whatever needs to happen. But like that's such a beautiful story.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
crazy. Yeah, yeah, and it's like brave, right? Because it like I don't know, like I
Oh, that was super scary. So
yeah,
I can understand. Yeah.
yeah, that's so crazy. Okay, so just like I'm like wow, like she just did it like live, like that's so cool. Because this is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to help people do. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's that moment where you're talking to somebody and in the back of your mind you're like, oh, like I could share this example that's happening in
Yeah.
my life, but most people don't. And I think that that's where they miss out on connection.
Well, and one thing I want to share is a lot of times we think, how is this actually going to help my business?
Mhm.
Like, how does this even have anything to do with, you know, maybe you're a financial coach or I don't know, your writing coach? Like, how does this even help my business sharing something vulnerable that's about me or about an experience I had, even though it doesn't really relate to the business?
Mhm.
But it's like the more we share those things, and obviously you don't want to share like something insane, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could,
But I
but
think it's something you're still in, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, I think that was the thing that you shared at our mastermind was like, if you're actually in it right now, like don't share it and like till you're over it. And that's what I did with my story of like the pregnancy thing. Cause in the middle of it, like I was a mess. Like I could not talk about it. I had like a bad mindset. So I had to like work through some things and then I was able to share it. And
Mhm.
so every time though, when like Nicholas shares something or anyone shares something vulnerable that they've gone through, it connects people to you even more, which then relates to your business.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
feel like they can trust you more, even if it's not related to like helping them grow their business or whatever you do. It's just they're connecting more with you and your story.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I've said a lot of times that like human beings for like hundreds of thousands of years have learned through stories, right? Like tribes literally used to gather around a campfire and the elders would like tell a story about that one guy that got killed on the mountain because he like surprised a mountain lion, right? And then everybody on the tribe would now remember that like, hey, there's a mountain lion on that mountain, you know, by that bush, like be
Mhm.
careful. Or like don't eat that berry because you're going to get sick or you might die or like God knows what the stories were, you know. But I think that the piece that makes everything relatable to your business is that it's the mindsets, right? It's the lessons that you learn. It's the journey that you've been through and the lessons that you've learned along that journey that have made you who you are today and that have made you capable of doing the things that you're doing in the world right now. Like you wouldn't be able to like help lead this company of like men if you hadn't done like all of these certain specific things, right? If you and Nicholas hadn't gone through your own journey and your own struggle and like step
Yeah.
your own voices and like learn to do things together as well as separately, right? And
Yeah.
like I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today if I hadn't spent like years and years and years being a relationship coach. Like, it's insane to me because people are like, you pivoted your entire business. And I'm over here like, I do the same thing, you know, but
Yeah.
I think that's so powerful because it all relates, because it's
Yeah.
life, you know, like our life is built on relationships, and relationships are built on sharing stories and being able to find commonalities between each other.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, anything on the news, like anything that goes viral, it's all a story.
Yeah.
And so some of the craziest stuff that we discount, we're like, well, like, why does that matter? It actually could be the thing
Sorry.
that like makes you go viral.
Yeah. No.
Like that's the thing that could go crazy. Like some of the stuff that like, Nicholas, we're like, I don't know if this will do good at all. And usually it goes like, it does so well. And we're like, that's really interesting. We weren't even going to post that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really glad I did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
Like,
like,
I know that he's done videos and stuff where he's just like, I don't know, like what's going to happen with this, but you just like kind of throw stuff against the wall, right?
yeah. And also realize that like, if you say something very controversial from a post, like some people may hate it.
Mhm.
Like we have gotten people that have unfriended us, blocked us, said some crazy stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's okay. Like, whatever, like move on. There's other people in the world.
Yeah.
And it's okay that a few people don't agree with your point of view or whatever you're going through. It's okay. Like, not everyone will.
Yeah.
And you have to like get that tough skin. And if you don't have it right now, like you will develop it the more you speak out and the more people that maybe won't agree with you. It'll hurt at first for sure. And just feel that. And then, you'll get over it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that I do my best to just be as okay with myself as I possibly can be, right? I'm just like, when I love and accept myself, when I like understand that the way that I view the world isn't the same way that other people are going to view the world, and that like my right and wrong and good and bad is different than somebody else's right and wrong and good and bad,
Yes.
then I'm just like, okay, like maybe it's not for you. That's cool. Like, that doesn't make you a bad person. It also doesn't make me a bad person. We just don't see something the same way. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Like, if you can't be an adult and still maintain a friendship or a business relationship or whatever because of that, then like, thank you for showing me who you are now. You know, like I literally always come back to like, how can I be grateful for this? Like, this is
Yes.
what's great about this, you know? And when you find that, it's like, oh, at least I found out now rather than like 2 years down the line. It
Yeah.
works out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Gary Vaynerchuk's like a really good example in the way like he just does him.
Mhm.
And I have learned a lot also from you, Yada, and just like in this journey of like not judging people.
Mhm.
And so many people hate on Gary, like so many people that I know. And I'm like, but like, that's just who he is. Like, he's always cussed. He's
Yeah.
always been hardcore. He's always been about the hustle. Like, that's just who he is. Who cares if you don't have to hate on him and
Yeah.
like try to like bash him because he thinks you should work all the time and grind. Like, one, there's a lot of people out there that believe that. They just don't actually say it.
Yeah.
He actually says it. And so I'm like, I don't know. The whole like the space, people are so mean to each other. And I'm like, everyone just like, it's okay. Other people attract to other people. You don't have to like hate on him because you don't agree with it.
Yeah. I actually am not a huge Gary Vee fan, but I think I take that approach. I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
that's his style. And he has a lot of good stuff to say too. And so I'm just like, all right, like I'll listen and I'll take what's useful for me. But whatever's not, like, that's okay too. Like, I don't need to go like comment on his video. Like, I can't believe you used the F word again. You know, it's like, who cares? Really? You're gonna be like upset by a word? I love that. Like when people are like, it's a bad word. I'm like, what did the word do? Like, how did it become bad? It's like,
I know.
your attachment to that word is negative. Like, that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
everybody's is, you know? I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
Anyway, we could go off on words forever.
I know.
I just bought this book by Stephen King, and it's him talking about like how to become a writer, like his take on,
Oh, wow.
and I've been reading it and I'm like, I feel like when I first picked up Brene Brown's books where I was like, she's saying all of the things that I want to say. Like, that's how I feel with this book, because he's talking about how important the language is and like composition and connecting with the reader and leaving out words that aren't important, that don't mean anything in the sentence. And I'm like, yes. But it's funny because I've never read anything of his because I don't like scary anything.
I don't either.
Yeah, so this is the first book that I was like, oh, I can actually read something you wrote because it's not going to terrify me.
Yeah, 100%.
But anyway, okay. Well, we're coming up right on half an hour. So why don't you go ahead and tell us where we can find more of you? We already know where to find Nicholas. So tell us where we can find you, follow you, your story, and get more amazingness.
The best way is on Instagram at Amanda Bayerle. And then also we're revamping our podcast. So Nicholas and I are going to do the Power Couple episodes again. So if you want like relationship stuff, Nicholas and I will come every single Friday and just give like our raw, real stuff in our relationship and the stuff that we see. So that's at the Billion Dollar Body Podcast. And you can find that on anywhere podcasts are at.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Yada.
Bye.